I had always done drawings growing up, but I was studying film, and the only art that I produced at that time, and even calling it art, there was a time in my mid-20s up until maybe only a few years ago where I didn't feel comfortable calling myself an artist because I didn't feel like I'd earned it. I didn't make any of this art. I'm gonna have to call my intern to fucking explain to me what any of it's about. A couple themes that I feel like are here are like a sense of manifestation of energy, whether it's psychological, whether it's a sense of the human being as a conduit. The notion of the spirit and the mind and the body as a kind of instrument by which external forces pass through and sometimes get trapped inside of. Every step is about experimentation, failure, change, reprocessing, retaking the same thing, doing something slightly different, finding accidents that work and then going with them and then finding associations and then slowly, even the sound when I record the sound, I feel like each of those different kind of components, which sometimes can be at odds with one another, are each represented here in some ways, that instead of you having a kind of control over the image, that it feels a sort of loss of control, a disrailing of structure. These pieces are quite experimental, I think, and they, at the best, in terms of their relationship to cinema, live at the outskirts of cinema and are sort of like almost like reconstructions of pieces of cinema where large sections are missing. Because sometimes I think of my work, especially like these pieces, as moments in larger pieces, but they don't exist. So all you're left with are these moments, these pieces, these fragments, and then you have to kind of like, that imply a larger narrative or a larger idea or another experience or piece of video that you don't have access to. I've been thinking a lot about installation and building sets and having a more immersive space to both shoot videos in and how that would function in a gallery or museum. If you create a group of space, structures, and aesthetics, objects by which you can use, you have establishing tight rules, which I feel like an installation could then allow you a freedom to create a new body of video work or a longer piece of video within that space. And that's something that's exciting to me and I've never really done exactly before, but I'm interested in. Does this show have any narrative story? I mean, look, in terms of like galleries that I've walked into before and like shows that you look at, I think this show is extremely narrative, in the sense that I'm allowing statements to be made and characters to be performed or aspects of my life to be recreated. I'll say this: sometimes I feel like I have psychological, I don't know, mental, spiritual problems that I try to work through in my videos. And sometimes I feel like it's visually, like as in what you are seeing, they manifest themselves in like different characters, different people, but they're all like somehow inside of my mind or inside of me or inside of my daily life or routine. We can be so weak and like wretched and damageable, but at the same time, we can manifest tremendous energy. And that's really interesting to me. When I was a kid, my dad, for most of my life in Tallahassee, Florida, which is where I'm from, my father, Jim Roche, who taught at the University of Florida State University, curated art shows and published books about folk art and outsider art. In the early 80s, I went to Haiti with him and the filmmaker Jonathan Demme when I was a child. The influence of yard signs, of homemade messages. Some of that work and the intensity, the aesthetic, has influenced, I think, I think you can see it in a piece like the Pulpit. A lot of people first saw my work through seeing it on YouTube. And actually, I resisted putting videos on YouTube for longer than some of my friends who got into the website early on when it was first kind of up and coming. And a friend of mine had a video called Hamster Dance, which he put on there. They got put on the front page and it got watched 3 million times. So I tried to make a few videos specifically for the internet that were short and kind of, I don't know, somehow had an aesthetic that I felt like fit. A year or two later, maybe look back at what I was doing and start to think that the platform of YouTube, really, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, had influenced my work, had influenced the way that I was thinking about specifically video and cinema, and kind of caused me to strip down everything that I had done in the past to almost like single shots, one moment, one event, and almost like the kind of like protoplasm of narrative cinema, to the point where like I'm removing everything but like these bare essentials. I think that one thing I've done with video in the last few years is deconstruct everything to like this moment or like one kind of event. Sometimes it's just like the trance of the beauty of light, the beauty of video and the image, the raw like essence of what an image is, of what an image is made of light and color. And you want to capture it, you want to hold it, you want to touch it. I mean, to some degree it mirrors death and our inability to stay in one place. I mean, when something feels good or something feels right or something is right, it's so hard to maintain a mood or a place in your life, because it's always changing. You know, I made all my films with no money at all. So I made my props, or I found them, or I bought them at Goodwill and I sewed things to them, or I did what I needed to do to make them interesting for what I was doing. Me and my friend Dan Deacon and our friend Dina Kelberman all lived together with a variety of other people through many different years in college and out of college. And we were always really into transforming our house. We would just get a bunch of like garbage cans of like trash and just fill our house with garbage, and then use them as a kind of platform to like throw a party or kind of even shoot a video, or like just like kind of do these like impromptu performances. That aesthetic and that kind of like release of like spatial transformation of my homes and my houses and warehouses that I've lived in influenced my video and things like that. I think right before I turned 21, I could have this a year wrong or something, but around that time, I worked on a film called The Manchurian Candidate, and I was intern in the art department on that film. There was a character who had lost their mind, and they had all been keeping journals. I made some books and drawings for that film that were in the film, and that, I think, and people liked them, and it was the first time that I had a sort of level of affirmation. Coming out of that experience a year or two later, basically I instinctively felt that I needed to go to an art program, basically, that I didn't want to go to film school. Cinema, I mean, has a different distribution system, obviously. You know, it's just a different approach, a different kind of time is put into that work. When you work on that scale and for that amount of time, I think that you almost have to push the work. You often will find that the work is being pushed harder into the world. I feel like in a film, I can have a conversation. These videos, I don't think, are as much about a conversation as they're about a kind of statement or a place or a mood that maybe asks a question. I like to produce videos in which, to some extent, it's not clear how you're supposed to read it. Some of them feel very much a documentation of me, and other ones feel like a kind of a character, but not exactly. And I try to weave between those sort of videos as I move forward, that maybe they're not exactly sure how much of it is fiction, how much of it is entertainment, how much of it is documentation. You know, that the reading that we bring to media is confused or not clear. Finishing touches.